Welcome to episode 4. Today I want to do something a little different. I want to sculpt a finger, or actually more precisely show you my approach in thinking about how I sculpt fingers and pretty much any part of the body, but fingers in particular can be a little tricky. And I have a couple of models here to show you. This is essentially what I'm thinking of. Very simple shapes. You could see it a little bit more detailed there, a little more detailed, etc. And I wanted to show you a time lapse of me sculpting this and take a look at that. Okay, so here's a time lapse movie starting with a very simple cube shape that I've tapered at the top, and then I'm doing the bend, and you can see right here, just to get the joint. So the main thing being starting with a cube. If I come back and just doing a taper, you can see right here, it's just a tapered cube. And there we have it. Then the next thing I'll do is knock the edge off here. So it starts as a cube, obviously. Then I knock the first edge off the top. And here in ZBrush, I'm just using the H-Polish brush. And in clay, I would do a similar thing by just planing it down. Then I do a little bit of adjustment here on the length of the joint. Then I place my finger bends here, the actual creases, and there's a couple interesting things to note on the placement of those. And basically, I'll wait till this comes around here, that the crease on these joints are in a very specific place. So here's the knuckle of the first joint. That crease is behind the knuckle. So here's the knuckle, the actual joint, and the fold, the crease underneath is behind it. In the central joint here, I guess that's the second joint back from the front, the crease is directly under it. And as we move forward in this video, you'll see the crease for the knuckle where it joins the hand is in front of that actual joint. But at this point, I'm using a planer brush here, the H-Polish, to round off the underside, and then I smooth the heck out of it. And what I'm going for is this idea of sort of harder surfaces along the top where the bone is more or less close to the skin, and pads or rounded shapes underneath. So now I'm smoothing it, and already just from that tapered cube, it's starting to look like a finger simply by knocking the edge off the top and the bottom and starting to round the bottom. Then I'll place in a little bit of material for the joint itself. At this point, it's a little bit sloppy. My inflate brush here was acting a little bit weird, but placing the joint, getting that in place, and here I'm adjusting that location of those joints again like I was showing you before, making it so that the crease for the first knuckle is behind the knuckle, the crease for the second knuckle is under it, and again you'll see that third crease develop a little bit later. Now I start working on the nail. And the important thing you may have seen in the little video we did about the foot is the nail comes out from under the bed here and rises above the bed in the front. So I'm sort of rounding off the tip of the finger here. Now this is sort of a average, I guess, normal male finger. Maybe I'm not doing a sort of a long nail or anything like that. And everyone's hands and fingers are completely different. This is sort of just a standard stylized, simplified finger, but all the elements are the same for all hands and fingers and toes even. It's just they change proportion here and there. So now I'm doing a little more shaping of that end of the finger, adding a little bit of wrinkle detail. And I'm not going to go too crazy realistic with this or spend too much time. I just want to get all the landmarks in. Because all these landmarks are the key thing. You then just move all that stuff around depending on the actual character. And at this point where the crease is, I'm adding the little fold, the little skin fold here. And what's interesting about this to notice is literally just doing a U shape here. You can see they all have that. And then letting that sort of bulge of skin taper off up into the rest of the hand, sort of creating a little cone form above it. And you'll see right there, I've just put that sort of cone shape in, and I smooth the heck out of it. And I come back and add a little more detail in the creasing, adding a little more pad here, sort of the bulge of the skin. And then I'm accenting that fold a little bit harder right there at the fold with a little more material. And that's about it. And you can see here, again, here's the knuckle on the first digit, crease behind it, center knuckle here, second knuckle with crease under it, and the joint here, the knuckle where it meets the hand, the crease is in front of it. In fact, there's another crease right here at the palm. So I also thought I'd show you a little sculpture I've been doing. And here we see this sculpture I did a long time ago at a workshop with Jordy Shell. So that's the character there, and basically I sculpt in Super Sculpey, and then I'll bake it and do some carving after the fact. So here we go. There's the hand placement, or I should say that's where the hand's going to go. It's just right up against the hip. So then I start by putting a little wedge of clay that will be basically the palm, and then adding it here. Also notice that I've angled this little part here. This is where the joints will be, the actual knuckles, and there's a ramp, a sort of a leaning forward. This will be the web between the fingers. Here I'm putting this first bit of the finger in, and you can see it looks just like what I showed you. It's a tapered cone, or I should say a tapered cube. It's square on all sides. And then I'm adding the other ones. You can see them a little more clearly here. Just very squared off forms. This allows me to get the overall taper and pose in place. Cleaning that up a little bit more. And at this point the fingers are a bit too thick, but I start to thin those down as I start knocking off the edges. There you can see again. And here I've started to knock those edges off a little bit, just like in the video. Just knocking the edge off these upper corners, starting to round off the underside a little bit, putting a little bit of a depression here where the nail will eventually be. There we see it again, a little bit more detail and progress. Then at this point I hit it with a heat gun. There's a close-up of my heat gun. And now I'm actually carving. At this point this has been baked, and I'm using rasps and files and X-Acto knife to control these shapes a little bit more. I could be doing all this in the soft clay, but I've been carving a lot of marble lately, and I find it a lot easier to control this by filing and shaving and carving subtractively than by additive clay, although I do add clay along the line here. So cleaning it up a little more. These are the different rasps that I use. They're rather small. This hand is about the size of a quarter. And here we can see a little more shaping of that. You can see here that I've knocked those edges off, and now I'm rounding all that over and softening it. Here's another view. I've started to smooth out the index finger a little bit more here. And on to the others, the same thing, starting to smooth that. And now we're really getting smooth at this point. I've done quite a bit of filing and rasping to get that a lot softer. Starting to add in the nails. They're a little bit clunky at this point, but you can see again the key being trying to get the nail bed the nail to come out from under the bed here at the cuticle and move up over the pad of the finger at the end. Also notice I'm trying to place this curvature behind the knuckle here, this crease, this one at the knuckle here, like we just saw. Here's a little bit more. Shaping, a little bit more. Nails are coming together at this point. Now we're getting a lot closer. Still need to have some fixes here. For example, at this point, the baked Sculpey broke off on this little fingernail here, so I'm adding in more clay and going back and forth with adding clay, baking, carving, etc. Now wrapping it up pretty much at the end here. This is just a shot of the tools that I use, my various files here. I really like these little guys, they're really great. And here we are, this is basically the finished hand. I'm pretty happy with it at this point. There's micro tweaking, I could continue to go and go and go, but I just generally get tired of it and run out of time. But I think the overall effect is convincing enough. So This shot does reveal a bit of a flaw. This finger's a bit bent right here. Um, I decided to just let it go, but knowing that it's there is, I think, just as important. And at some point, you have to let things go. There's the thumb and the butt. So there we go. That is how I sculpted that hand. Hopefully, it's helpful and useful. Again, looking at this idea of starting with basic primitive shapes and thinking in terms of how those all intersect and blend to each other to create a more convincing and at least architecturally sound form. Hope that was helpful. Thanks again. Bye.